At 35,000 feet above the Earth, silence feels different. It isn't quiet, it's controlled. A low, steady hum fills the cabin, the sound of engines cutting through air, thinner than breath. Lights glow softly above sleeping passengers. Seat belts rest loosely across chests. Screens flicker with half-watched movies. This flight was supposed to be forgettable. Just another line on a schedule. Just another safe journey from point A to point B. No one on board knew they were flying inside the final minutes of normal life. The captain had logged over 18,000 flight hours. His hands knew this aircraft better than his own home. Every switch, every vibration, every sound. Routine had become muscle memory. The co-pilot monitored instruments, calm and focused. Altitude steady. Speed locked. Weather clear for hundreds of miles. Autopilot engaged. Everything was perfect. Then the captain stopped talking.
Captain,
At first, the co-pilot didn't notice. Silence in the cockpit isn't unusual. Pilots often fly entire stretches without words. But this silence was heavy, unnatural. The co-pilot glanced left. The captain's head was tilted slightly forward. His eyes were open, but unfocused. His hand rested motionless near the throttle. "Captain?" the co-pilot said casually. No response. "Captain?" Still nothing. That's when the captain's body shifted, not with movement, but with collapse. His head dropped. His shoulders slumped. His breathing turned shallow and uneven. The co-pilot froze. Training kicked in a half-second later. He shook the captain, hard. "Captain, can you hear me?" Nothing. The aircraft continued flying smoothly, unaware it's most experienced. Guardian had just left the fight. The co-pilot grabbed the radio. "Medical emergency in the cockpit," he said. Voice controlled but tight. "Request immediate assistance." Down in the cabin, flight attendants were pouring drinks, adjusting blankets, smiling politely. Then the call came. The tone of the intercom wasn't normal. It wasn't calm. It was sharp, urgent. "Is there a doctor on board?" the lead attendant asked. A few heads turned. No one stood. She asked again. Still nothing. Inside the cockpit, the co-pilot was now flying manually. Sweat formed at his temples as alarms flickered softly, not screaming yet, but whispering warnings. Flying alone was manageable. Flying alone while managing an unconscious captain at cruising altitude was not. The co-pilot made the hardest decision of his career. He unlocked the cockpit door. Passengers looked up as it opened, something most of them had never seen mid-flight. The sight stopped conversations cold. Inside, the captain lay slumped in his seat, oxygen mask partially attached. The co-pilot's face was pale. Then came the announcement that would divide time into before and after. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice echoed, carefully controlled. "We have a medical situation in the cockpit. If there is anyone on board with flight experience, commercial or military, please identify yourself immediately." A ripple of confusion spread through the cabin. People laughed nervously. Some thought it was a joke. Others felt a cold weight settle in their stomach. Flight experience? Military? At 35,000 feet? Seconds passed. No one stood. The silence grew heavier than turbulence. The co-pilot's eyes scanned the cabin from the cockpit doorway. Then, movement. Row 18, window seat. A woman slowly unbuckled her seatbelt.
We are
Not
experiencing
rushed,
some minor turbulence,
not
but there is
dramatic.
absolutely no cause
She
for
stood like
concern.
someone responding to a long-expected call. People turned to look at her. She wore jeans, a dark jacket, no insignia, no uniform, nothing that suggested heroism. She met the co-pilot's eyes. I have
I
flight
understand the
experience,
concerns,
she said.
and I assure you
Her
we are
voice
taking
didn't
every
shake.
measure necessary
The co-pilot
to resolve this issue
hesitated.
promptly and
What
effectively.
kind? She paused for half a second,
We have
not for
regained primary
confidence,
controls.
but for precision.
The landing sequence
I
is a
flew
go.
F-16s, she said.
He's on
The
the
words
train.
didn't land
The
immediately.
station is right
Some
behind us.
passengers didn't understand.
Don't look now.
Others did and felt their blood run cold. An F-16 is not a passenger jet. It's a weapon. A machine built for speed, violence, and survival at the edge of human limits. The co-pilot swallowed. This is a commercial aircraft, he said carefully. She nodded. I know, a flight attendant whispered. Are you sure? The woman looked past her, toward the cockpit. Very. She walked forward as turbulence brushed the plane lightly, like a warning tap on the shoulder. Inside the cockpit, the smell of recycled air and stress filled the space.
Getting rough out there.
The unconscious captain didn't move. The instruments glowed with quiet authority. The woman stepped inside. Her eyes moved, not frantically,
Yes, the
not
next turn
slowly,
is confirmed.
but instinctively. Altitude, airspeed, attitude, engine performance. Her breathing changed. This wasn't nostalgia. This was awakening. Her hands hovered near the controls, respectful, restrained. The co-pilot closed the cockpit door behind her. 125 people sat outside, unaware they were now relying on a woman whose past life had trained her for combat, not comfort. She looked at the co-pilot. How long has he been out? She asked. 2 minutes, he replied. She nodded once. 2 minutes at altitude is an eternity. She adjusted her posture. Straight-backed, grounded. The aircraft flew on. The earth spun below. And without knowing it, 125 lives had just shifted hands. The cockpit door sealed shut with a heavy click. That sound mattered, because once it closed, there was no audience, no applause, no second chances. Just two pilots, one trained for war, one trained for routine, and an aircraft carrying 125 lives balanced on invisible air. The woman moved first. Seat, she said. The co-pilot hesitated. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Her eyes were already scanning the panel, reading the aircraft like a living organism. He slid into the right seat. She took the left, the captain's seat, without ceremony. The unconscious captain sagged against his restraints, oxygen hissing softly. She didn't look at him. Not yet. Autopilot? She asked. Engaged, the co-pilot replied. Her fingers twitched. Leave it, she said. For now. The aircraft shuddered, not violently, just enough to remind them that physics never sleeps. A soft chime sounded. Then another. Caution lights flickered amber. Cabin pressure fluctuations. The co-pilot swallowed. We're drifting 200 feet off assigned altitude. She nodded, eyes locked forward. Because no one's flying, she said calmly. The plane is just falling politely. She reached forward and placed her hand on the control column. The moment she touched it, her breathing slowed. Muscle memory took over, not from airline simulators, but from high G turns at supersonic speed, where hesitation meant death. She disengaged autopilot. The aircraft responded instantly. The nose dipped slightly. Airspeed crept upward. A warning tone chirped. The co-pilot stiffened. Careful. I know, she said. I'm listening. She wasn't watching the instruments. She was feeling them. Vibrations through the controls. Micro changes in resistance. The subtle language of a machine under stress. She eased back. The plane stabilized. Outside the cockpit, no one screamed. They didn't know yet. Inside, sweat traced a slow line down the co-pilot's spine. ATC wants us to descend to 28,000, he said. She nodded. They don't know how close we are to losing margin. She keyed the radio. Center, this is Flight 732. We have a medical incapacitation of the captain. Request immediate vectors and priority landing." There was a pause. Then the controller's voice came back, calm, professional, and suddenly very awake. "Flight 732, roger. Say souls on board and fuel remaining." The co-pilot answered automatically. She listened. Calculated. 125 souls. Enough fuel for diversion, but not indecision. Another shudder rippled through the airframe. This time, stronger. She felt it in her bones. Weather. Not on radar yet, but close. "Storm cell at our 12 o'clock, she said. The co-pilot stared. "Radar is clean." She shook her head. Not for long. The first turbulence hit like a warning slap. Seatbelts snapped tight in the cabin. Drink spilled. A baby cried. In the cockpit, everything rattled. The unconscious captain groaned softly, sound that meant nothing and everything. The aircraft rolled 5 degrees left. She corrected instantly. "Keep your eyes outside the instruments," she told the co-pilot. "I need you thinking ahead, not staring at numbers." He nodded, breathing shallow. Another jolt. Harder. The plane dropped 20 feet. Alarms woke up. Not screaming, arguing. Terrain awareness. Airspeed deviation. Autothrottle disagreement. The cockpit filled with sound. She silenced what mattered. Ignored what didn't. "This isn't an F-16, the co-pilot said, half to himself. She didn't look at him. "No," she said. "But fear flies the same in every aircraft." A violent updraft slammed the nose upward. Passengers screamed. She shoved the yoke forward, hard. The aircraft protested, metal flexing, engines roaring louder. Too far forward and they'd overspeed. Too far back and they'd stall. This was the knife edge. Her jaw tightened. She rode it. Then calm. For 3 seconds. Then worse. The storm hit fully. Rain battered the windshield like gravel. Lightning flashed so close it filled the cockpit with white fire. The plane shook like it was being grabbed by something angry. The co-pilot shouted, "We're getting wind shear." She already knew. Her hands moved faster now. Trim, power, pitch, every correction small, exact, no wasted motion. This wasn't about strength. It was about restraint. The altitude warning blared. They were dropping slowly, relentlessly. "Talk to me," she said. The co-pilot snapped out of his freeze. Descending through 32,000. Vertical speed -800. "Too fast," she said. She pulled gently, then added power. Engine screamed. The aircraft responded, reluctantly, like a wounded animal deciding whether to live. The descent slowed, then stopped. They hung there, suspended, balanced between gravity and thrust. She exhaled for the first time in minutes. "Okay," she said quietly. "Now we fly." Outside the cockpit, passengers clutched armrests. Inside, a former fighter pilot stared straight ahead, eyes burning, mind locked into a single truth. If she lost focus for even 1 second, everyone would die. And this was only the beginning. The storm didn't end. It followed them, like a predator that had finally found something worth chasing. Rain smeared the windshield into gray streaks. Lightning flashed so close it felt personal, like the sky was testing their resolve. The woman didn't blink. Her hands stayed steady on the controls, knuckles pale, grip firm but never rigid. "Center just cleared us direct to Riverbend International," the co-pilot said, voice tight. "Longest runway. Emergency crews standing by." She nodded once. "How far?" 23 minutes. She exhaled slowly. "Plenty of time to make 100 mistakes," she said. "Or none." The unconscious captain shifted slightly in his seat, chest rising unevenly. She glanced at him for the first time. A man who had carried thousands safely through the sky, now unable to lift a finger. There was no blame in her eyes, only responsibility. The plane jolted again, sharp, sudden. The airspeed needle danced. She corrected. Again. The storm was thinning now, but its leftovers were worse. Unpredictable pockets of violent air that struck without warning. The co-pilot wiped sweat from his brow. I've never felt turbulence like this during a medical diversion. She gave a thin smile. That's because this isn't turbulence, she said. It's the atmosphere reminding us who's in charge. They broke through the cloud layer. Below them, the earth reappeared, dark, wet, and alive with city lights. The runway would be there. The question was whether they would arrive correctly. She began the descent. Every 1,000 feet brought new problems. Cabin pressure alarms chirped again. She adjusted. The co-pilot called out altitudes, speeds, headings, his voice growing steadier as purpose replaced fear. Passengers in the cabin felt the nose dip. Some prayed. Some cried. Some recorded videos, unaware they might be filming their final moments. At 15,000 feet, the aircraft hit a crosswind. Hard. The nose yawed right. She countered immediately, rudder input smooth, measured. The co-pilot's eyes widened. That was normal, she said. If you expect it. The runway lights appeared faintly in the distance. Not welcoming. Judging. She adjusted their approach. Too steep, they'd come in hot. Too shallow, they'd stall. Commercial aircraft forgive mistakes. Only once. The co-pilot swallowed. You've never landed one of these. She didn't deny it. No, she said. But I've landed worse. The radio crackled. Flight 732, wind 280 at 26 knots, gusting 3-4. The numbers hung heavy in the air. That was bad. She closed her eyes for half a second, not to escape, but to calculate. Angle, speed, mass. This aircraft weighed over 70 tons. She adjusted power. Flaps, she said. The co-pilot complied. The plane shuddered as they extended, drag increasing, lift changing. She compensated instantly. The ground rushed closer. At 5,000 feet, the wind shear warning screamed. Not chirped. Screamed. The co-pilot's heart slammed against his ribs. Shear, shear. She didn't flinch. She pushed power to maximum. The engines roared like beasts unleashed. The plane fought the invisible hand pulling it down. Passengers were thrown forward against their belts. A woman screamed. A man shouted prayers in a language no one else understood. The vertical speed needle dipped, then stabilized. They were still flying. Barely. Don't pull, she said quietly. Let it climb on thrust. The warning stopped. Silence returned, heavier than noise. At 2,500 feet, the runway filled the windshield. Too fast. She pulled power back. Too slow. She added just enough. Her movements were microscopic. Now fighter instincts refined into commercial precision. The co-pilot stared, awed and terrified. Decision height in 10 seconds, he said. This was the moment. Below this altitude, there would be no go-around. No reset. No mercy. The unconscious captain groaned again. She ignored him. She ignored everything except the runway. Lights rushed toward them. The wind kicked again, last attempt. The plane drifted left. She corrected with rudder, not yoke. Perfect. 500, the co-pilot called. Her breathing slowed. 200. She cut power. The aircraft sank. 50. She flared, gently, not too early, not too late. The wheels hit. Hard, but straight. The sound was violent, metal screaming against concrete. The aircraft bounced once. The co-pilot gasped. She held it down. "Reverse thrust," she commanded. Engines howled in protest. The plane decelerated fast. Emergency vehicles blurred past the windows, lights flashing red and blue through rain. The runway rushed beneath them. Speed dropped. 100 knots. 80. 60. The plane shuddered. Then slowed. Then finally stopped. Silence. Then sound. Crying. Shouting. Applause echoing through the cabin like thunder. The co-pilot slumped back in his seat, hands shaking. "We're down," he whispered. "We're actually down." She let go of the controls. Only then did her hands start to tremble. Outside, 125 lives exhaled at once. Inside the cockpit, a woman who had once flown into combat sat quietly, knowing she had just fought the hardest battle of her life. And won. For a moment after the aircraft stopped, no one moved. The engines wound down slowly, their roar fading into a gentle whine, then silence. Rain tapped softly against the fuselage as if the sky itself was catching its breath. The woman remained in the captain's seat. Her hands still rested on the controls, not gripping them anymore, just touching them, like someone making sure something real hadn't vanished. The co-pilot broke the silence. "We did it," he said. His voice cracked. She nodded, but didn't smile. Not yet. Outside the cockpit, the cabin had erupted into sound, crying, laughing, prayers spoken out loud, strangers hugging like family. Flight attendants wiped tears from their eyes as they tried to restore order, their training overwhelmed by emotion. A child clapped without understanding why. A man sank to his knees in the aisle. One woman pressed her forehead against the seat in front of her and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." None of them knew her name. They only knew they were alive. The cockpit door opened carefully, like someone opening a sacred space. The lead flight attendant looked inside. Her eyes went first to the unconscious captain, then to the woman in his seat. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then the attendant exhaled, a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. "You saved us," she said. The woman shook her head slowly. "We landed," she replied. "That's all." Emergency crews arrived within seconds. Medics rushed the captain onto a stretcher. Oxygen, monitors, urgent voices. As they carried him out, his hand twitched slightly, a sign of life. The woman watched silently. Only when the stretcher disappeared did she finally stand. Her legs nearly gave out. The co-pilot caught her arm instinctively. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, though her body hadn't fully caught up with the moment. "Adrenaline," she said. "It always leaves late." They exited the cockpit together. The moment she stepped into the cabin, everything changed. Applause exploded. Not polite clapping. Not courtesy. This was raw, loud, uncontrollable. People stood. Some cried openly. Some reached out, desperate just to touch her sleeve, her hand, her jacket, proof that the person who had saved them was real. "Thank you. You're a hero. You saved my baby." The words blurred together. She froze. This wasn't a cockpit. There were no instruments to read, no procedures to follow. Just human emotion, unfiltered and overwhelming. She raised her hands gently. "Please," she said. "Sit down. Let the crew do their jobs." Her voice was calm again, commanding. The applause softened but didn't stop. As she walked down the aisle, people stepped aside like she carried something fragile or sacred. At the door, she paused. A young boy looked up at her, eyes wide. "Are you a fighter pilot?" he asked. She smiled for the first time. "I was," she said. "What are you now?" he asked. She thought for a moment. Someone who was in the right seat today. Outside, rain washed the runway clean. News crews were already gathering beyond the barriers, cameras pointed, microphones ready. A story like this doesn't stay quiet. But she didn't go to them. She didn't look back. She walked toward the terminal alone. Later, in a quiet room far from flashing lights, the co-pilot found her sitting with a paper cup of coffee she hadn't touched. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. She looked up. "You trusted me," she replied. That was enough. He hesitated. "You never told me your name." She smiled softly. "Names don't fly airplanes," she said. Hours later, the news would call it a miracle. Experts would debate probabilities. Analysts would break down wind speeds, descent angles, response times. They would say it was impossible. They would say it was luck. But the truth was simpler and heavier. It was preparation meeting the worst possible moment. The captain survived. Weeks later, he would ask to meet the woman who landed his plane. When they finally spoke, he took her hands and said only one thing. "You brought everyone home." She nodded. "So did you," she replied. "You trained us all." And with that, the circle closed. No medals were awarded. No ceremonies held. She returned to her life, quiet, ordinary, invisible. But somewhere, 125 people slept differently now. Parents hugged longer. Children laughed louder. Ordinary moments felt heavier with meaning. Because once, at 35,000 feet, everything had almost ended. And one woman stood up. Not because she wanted to be remembered, but because she knew how to fly,